They say beauty fades, but no one warns you how fast it burns when you try to keep it alive. I wasn't addicted to drugs or fame. I was addicted to the reflection that once smiled back at me. Every needle, every secret treatment, every lie I told myself, it was all for a spotlight that refused to stay. Until one morning, my skin began to peel, and with it, the illusion I'd spent my life protecting. And that's where my story begins. Not in a photo shoot or on a runway, but in the quiet moment when the mirror finally stopped lying to me. Chapter 1: The Light That Burned Too Bright. I used to believe that the world revolved around the flash of a camera. The way the light hit my face felt like approval, like validation carved in silver. I was 23 when the world first called me beautiful. Not in passing, not like a compliment thrown across a bar, but officially, contractually, headline-worthy beautiful. My name was on magazine covers. My smile was on billboards. And my walk, well, my walk made people pause mid-sentence. That was my oxygen. Fame, applause, lenses. But no one tells you that the same lights that lift you up also bleach your spirit, one flash at a time. You know, it's funny. The moment you start thinking you've made it, really made it, that's when the countdown quietly begins. By the time I turned 35, my calendar wasn't as full. The calls from agencies slowed down. The younger models, fresh, glowing, ageless, began taking center stage. Girls like Chloe Vance, with her endless legs and innocent grin, or Lena Rivers, who could turn any runway into her personal kingdom. I told myself it was just a slow season, that the brands were shifting their styles. But deep down, I knew what it really was. I wasn't new anymore. In an industry addicted to youth, the moment you're not new, you're practically invisible. That's when the whispers began. "You could try the new anti-aging line, Madison," one of the stylists said once, pretending to brush lint off my jacket. "It's safe," another one chimed in. "Everyone's doing it. Fillers, skin boosters, glutathione injections. They make you camera-ready again." I laughed it off at first. I told them I didn't need it. But the next day, when I saw a 20-year-old girl posing on the same set I once ruled, her skin almost glowing under the studio light, something broke inside me. I looked at myself in the mirror that night, not the glamorous one surrounded by bulbs, just the bathroom mirror in my apartment, and I realized I'd started seeing cracks that weren't even there, lines that only existed in my fear. That's when I met Dr. Varela, a cosmetic specialist. His clinic smelled like lavender and ambition. I told him I wanted to look fresh, nothing drastic. He smiled, that confident, rehearsed doctor smile, and told me about glutathione injections. He said, "They'll even out your skin tone, brighten your complexion, you'll look radiant again." I didn't ask too many questions. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The first few sessions felt magical. My skin seemed brighter, smoother. I started getting more likes on social media, more brand inquiries. Even Chloe complimented me once backstage, saying, "Wow, Madison, you're glowing lately." I smiled politely, but inside, I was triumphant. I was back. But the high didn't last long. That's the cruel part about chasing light. It never lets you rest. A few months later, while preparing for a runway show in New York, I noticed a strange burning sensation on my skin. It started on my neck, like a sunburn that wouldn't fade. Within hours, it spread, small red patches, tender to touch. I thought maybe it was an allergy, stress, dehydration. I brushed it off and went on with rehearsals. But by the next morning, I woke up drenched in sweat, shaking. My skin felt raw. I had a fever, chills, and when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. The redness had turned into blisters, painful, angry blisters, and some areas had started peeling. I panicked. I called Dr. Varela, my voice cracking. He told me to come immediately. When I arrived, he looked genuinely alarmed. I could see it in his eyes, that flicker of fear doctors try to hide. After a quick examination, he said something I'll never forget. "Madison, you might be having a severe reaction, possibly toxic epidermal necrosis." My breath caught. I had never heard of it before. He explained that toxic epidermal necrosis, TEN, was rare but life-threatening. It could happen as a reaction to certain drugs or substances, including glutathione injections. It starts like a flu, fever, fatigue, body aches, then progresses fast. The skin blisters, then peels away, exposing raw, tender flesh. It can affect the mouth, eyes, even the genitals. I remember staring at him, numb, my brain refusing to absorb the words life-threatening. The next few days were a blur of hospital corridors and sterile air. I was admitted into a burn unit because that's how they treat TEN, like burn victims. Every inch of me hurt. My skin, my eyes, my pride. Lena visited once. She brought flowers but couldn't meet my gaze. Chloe posted a vague, "Get well soon," on Instagram. Others didn't say a word. In this industry, silence is the loudest response. It means you've already been replaced. The irony was brutal. The very treatment I took to look flawless had stripped my skin, literally. And suddenly, fame didn't matter. Cameras didn't matter. All I wanted was to feel normal again. During those long, painful nights, lying in that hospital bed, I replayed every decision in my head. The lies I told myself, the times I smiled through humiliation, the moments I let my worth be defined by others' gaze. I had chased youth so desperately that I forgot how to live. It took 3 months before I could even look at my reflection again. My skin was fragile, patched, scarred in places. The doctors said I was lucky to survive, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt exposed, like the illusion had finally burned away. Yet something changed in me. Maybe it was humility, maybe it was grief, or maybe it was the realization that the very industry that once celebrated me never really saw me at all. That was the beginning of my awakening, though I didn't know it yet. Because even after the pain, the world outside hadn't changed, and fame never forgets to come knocking again, dressed as redemption. But this time, the price would be even higher.
Chapter 2: The Return to the Spotlight. Recovery changes you in ways you can't predict. It doesn't just heal the body, it rearranges the mind. When I finally left the hospital, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. Literally. The nurses had taught me how to apply ointments gently, how to protect the fragile new layers that had grown in place of the old. The mirror still scared me, but not because of vanity this time, because it reminded me how close I had come to disappearing. I stayed hidden for almost a year. No interviews, no photo shoots, no public appearances. I turned down invitations to industry events where I knew they'd whisper, "That's Madison Cole. She used to be huge." Used to be. Those 3 words cut deeper than any wound I'd survived. But time does strange things to memory. By the 2nd year, I started getting emails again. Quiet, hesitant messages from smaller brands and independent photographers. Most of them weren't offering much money, but they said they admired my strength, my raw beauty. Funny, right? The same scars they once would have hidden were now the reason they wanted me. One email stood out, from a fashion collective in Los Angeles that specialized in authentic aging campaigns. They wanted to feature me as a comeback story, a symbol of resilience. At first, I thought it was pity disguised as opportunity, but something inside me, maybe that old hunger, maybe pride, whispered, "Take it." So I did. The photo shoot was intimate, soft lighting, neutral tones, nothing too dramatic. I wore minimal makeup, and for the first time in my career, my scars weren't concealed. When the photos were released, they spread faster than I expected. Comments flooded in. "So brave. Finally a real woman in fashion. Her strength shows through her eyes." I should have been happy, right? But part of me couldn't shake the suspicion that the same people applauding me for being real were still chasing perfection elsewhere. Still, the attention reignited something. My name was back in circulation. People started calling again. Agents, old photographers, even designers I hadn't heard from in years. And then came Chloe Vance. She reached out to me one evening, her message short and sugar-coated. "Hey matey, saw your new campaign, proud of you. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime." Chloe never reached out to me unless there was something in it for her. But I agreed. I needed to face her. Face the industry, not as a rival anymore, but as someone who'd survived it. When we met, she was flawless, of course. Not a single wrinkle, her skin glowing with that unnatural perfection that comes from chemical faith. She talked about her new luxury skincare line, the brand deals, the exclusive shoots in Milan. Then casually she leaned in and said, "You know, Madison, if you ever want to get back to the top, I can hook you up with my team. They do this new treatment, stem cell infusions. Totally safe. No side effects." I froze. That same word, safe. I had heard it before. I felt the echo of Dr. Varella's voice and the hospital lights flickering behind my eyelids. I smiled politely, thanked her, and changed the subject. But when I got home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That's the problem with fame. Once you've tasted it, it never fully leaves your system. You can swear you're done, that you've grown beyond it, but deep down, the craving lingers. So when Harper Lowe, my old agent, called a week later, offering a spot in a high-profile campaign for a luxury brand in Paris, I hesitated. "They want a story of rebirth, matey. You're perfect for it. But they might want a few tweaks, just to smooth out the scars." There it was, the second test. The first was temptation. The second was compromise. I stared at my reflection that night, the faint traces of healing across my cheeks, the uneven texture around my neck. Part of me wanted to say yes, to fix what was broken, to walk those runways again under the blinding lights. But another part, the newer, quieter part, whispered, "At what cost?" Still, curiosity gnawed at me. I visited the brand's prep studio for a consultation.
Inside, I saw faces I recognized. Old colleagues, rivals, newcomers. Lena Rivers was there too, radiant as ever, surrounded by assistants. When she saw me, her smile flickered, just for a second. Then she said, "Well, look who's back from the ashes." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes, those cold, ocean blue eyes, were nothing but. I felt the tension settle between us, unspoken but sharp. Lena had always been the kind of woman who treated life like a competition that never ended. She was the queen now, and I was the ghost of what she once feared becoming. The campaign director, Marco Ruiz, greeted me warmly but studied my face too long. "You've been through a lot, Madison. That's powerful. But we do need to ensure the camera picks up strength, not trauma. Maybe a little refining treatment. Just for texture." The word refining rang like a trapdoor opening beneath me. I could already hear the pitch coming, the same old dance of manipulation disguised as opportunity. I thanked him, promised to think it over, and left. Outside, the evening air felt heavy. I sat in my car for a long time, just breathing. I thought about the hospital smell, the pain, the nurses who'd changed my dressings with such tenderness. I thought about how close I had come to losing not just my career, but my life. And I realized something that shook me to my core. The industry wasn't offering me redemption. It was offering me relapse. I went home, deleted every number that ever made me feel small, and opened my laptop. I started typing. Not a modeling application, not a press release, but a story. My story. Every scar, every injection, every betrayal. I didn't plan it. It just poured out. The truth felt heavier than any secret I'd ever carried. When I posted it on my social page, I didn't expect it to go viral, but it did. Thousands of comments, hundreds of shares. Some women confessed they had been considering the same treatments, but changed their minds after reading my story. Others thanked me for saying what no one in the industry dared to say, that perfection has a body count. Of course, not everyone was pleased. Chloe called me a drama queen. Lena posted a cryptic story about models who can't handle the heat. Harper warned me I'd burned bridges. Maybe I had. But for the first time, I didn't care. Still, I knew the backlash wasn't over. Because when you tell the truth in a world built on illusion, the illusion fights back. And it did, in ways I could never have imagined.
Chapter 3. The Cost of Truth. The morning after my story went viral, I woke up to chaos. My phone was exploding with notifications. News outlets wanted interviews. Podcasts were calling it the confession that shook the fashion world. For a moment, I felt weightless. I thought maybe this was it, the start of real change, a turning point for an industry that chews up beauty and spits out scars. But fame, even the accidental kind, has claws, and it always comes with a price. At first, the support was overwhelming. Women from all over the world wrote to me, models, influencers, mothers, telling me they'd canceled their cosmetic appointments after reading my post. One said, "You saved my life." Another wrote, "I never thought someone like you would be brave enough to tell the truth." I cried reading those messages. For once, the spotlight felt warm instead of blinding. But just as quickly as it came, the warmth started to burn. A few days later, a gossip site published an article titled Madison Cole's Meltdown, Lies or Redemption Arc. The headline made my stomach twist. They claimed I fabricated parts of my story to regain relevance. They said the photos of my scars were digital dramatizations. And worst of all, they quoted Dr. Varela, my former cosmetic specialist, who denied any wrongdoing and suggested my reaction might have been due to personal negligence. That hit like a punch. I tried calling him, but his clinic had already released a statement distancing themselves from me. Legal, polished, cold. It said, Ms. Cole's claims are unsubstantiated and medically inaccurate. Just like that, my truth was being repackaged as scandal. By the end of that week, I'd lost 2 sponsorships, both brands citing negative publicity. Chloe posted a carefully crafted caption on her story. Always check facts before spreading fear. Beauty should empower, not shame. She didn't name me, but everyone knew who she meant. And Lena? She went a step further. During a live interview, she smirked and said, "Some people will do anything to stay relevant, even invent tragedies." The comment went viral again. I told myself not to respond, but the lies clawed at me. Late one night, I opened my laptop, ready to type a rebuttal, to scream into the digital void. But then I stopped. I realized that if I kept fighting them on their turf, I'd be fighting forever. Instead, I logged off. For the first time in my adult life, I disconnected from everything: the followers, the likes, the validation. The silence was terrifying at first. When your identity has been built on attention, quiet feels like extinction. But over time, the stillness began to heal me in a way the hospital never could. That's when I met Eleanor Grant, a retired photographer I'd once worked with in my early days. She reached out after reading my story, inviting me to her studio in Santa Monica. She said, "Let's talk. No cameras, no pretense." Her studio was nothing like the glossy sets I remembered. It was warm, cluttered, alive with half-finished canvases and fading prints. Eleanor was older now, her silver hair wild and her hands steady. She poured me coffee and said, "I watched the world eat you alive, Madison. I'm glad you spat it back out." That made me laugh for the first time in weeks. She listened, really listened, as I told her everything: the injections, the pain, the betrayal, the industry's cruelty. When she finished, she leaned back and said something that changed me. "You have spent your whole life modeling other people's visions. Maybe it's time you model your own truth." Her words stayed with me. I started thinking, maybe I could rebuild from the wreckage, not as the Madison who sought perfection, but as the Madison who survived it. So, when a small documentary team contacted me about doing a short film, not about beauty, but about recovery and identity, I said yes. I didn't need makeup, I didn't need filters. I just needed my story. During filming, they asked me what I'd learned through it all. I said that beauty isn't the absence of scars, it's the courage to live with them. When the documentary aired, it didn't break the internet, but it touched the right people. Messages started coming in again, not from brands this time, but from hospitals, medical students, even dermatologists who wanted to raise awareness about toxic epidermal necrosis and unsafe cosmetic practices. Some of them shared statistics that glutathione injections, often given intravenously, were never meant for skin whitening, and that cases like mine were increasing. One letter came from a young nurse in Chicago. She wrote, "Your story helped us identify a similar reaction
early in another patient. She's alive today because of you." I sat in my kitchen reading that message over and over. For the first time, my fame had saved someone, not by how I looked, but by what I'd endured. But peace doesn't come without more tests. As the documentary gained quiet respect, the industry began to shift, slightly, almost imperceptibly. Some brands began championing real beauty, but others turned it into a trend, using authenticity as another marketing tool. Chloe launched a Truth in Beauty campaign. Lena signed a deal for a book titled Flawless at Any Age. I watched them reclaim my message and sell it back to the same audience that once shunned me. It hurt, yes, but it also clarified something deep within me. They could imitate my words, but they couldn't fake my scars. So, I made a choice. I started a foundation, the 10 Project, named after the condition that almost killed me. It would educate women on the risks of unregulated cosmetic treatments, fund research on safer dermatological alternatives, and offer counseling to models dealing with body image trauma. At the launch, I stood on stage in a simple white dress, no makeup except for a thin line of eyeliner. My voice trembled at first, but when I looked out into the crowd, doctors, survivors, young models, I felt anchored. I told them, the industry didn't destroy me. It refined me. Painfully, yes, but truthfully. And now, I get to use what it took from me to give something back. The applause that followed wasn't the same as the cheers of the runway. It was quieter, deeper, filled with understanding. That night, as I walked home under the city lights, I thought about the woman I used to be. The one chasing youth, chasing approval. She was gone. What remained was someone older, wiser, and, paradoxically, more radiant. But the story didn't end there, because when you try to change an industry built on illusion, it fights back. And soon, I'd face my most personal battle yet.
Chapter 4. Shadows Behind the Mirror. Success has a way of attracting shadows. The brighter your light, the longer they grow behind you. After the launch of the 10 Project, things moved faster than I could have imagined. The foundation got attention from medical boards, universities, and even government health departments. Donations poured in, survivors started sharing their stories, and for once, they weren't silenced or shamed. It felt pure, purposeful, like the pain I went through had finally found its place in the world. But the higher we rose, the louder the whispers became. It started subtly, little rumors in the media, questioning where the donations were going, implying misuse of funds. Then came the headlines: Madison Cole's redemption empire under scrutiny. My heart dropped when I read it. The article quoted anonymous insiders, claiming I'd use donations to fund my personal lifestyle, travel, clothes, cosmetic care. None of it was true. I traced the source back to a new communications manager we'd hired, Rachel Drew, a young woman with sharp cheekbones and even sharper ambition. I'd trusted her. She'd been efficient, charismatic, and always a little too eager to please. I never suspected that she was the leak. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She smiled, cold and confident. "It's nothing personal, Madison," she said. "It's business. People love a rise and fall story, and I plan to be on the right side of it." I remember just staring at her, speechless. I had been her once, hungry for relevance, willing to sell someone else's story if it meant survival. It hit me then that the cycle wasn't breaking. It was mutating, growing younger faces but keeping the same poison. Within a week, the media storm worsened. Chloe appeared on a podcast talking about the dangers of fake advocacy. Again, no names, but everyone knew who she meant. Lena reposted the gossip stories with a simple caption, "Told you." Every tabloid headline felt like a knife reopening old wounds. I didn't care about fame anymore, but this was different. This was my truth they were twisting again, the legacy I'd fought to build. I wanted to disappear. I won't lie, part of me thought about giving it all up. The late-night calls, the interviews, the endless defense. I felt the same helplessness I'd felt lying in that hospital bed years ago, stripped of control, exposed and burning. But something was different this time. Back then, I had been fighting to survive for myself. Now, I had hundreds of women looking up to me, survivors who'd written letters saying my foundation gave them hope. I couldn't abandon them. So, I fought back. I hired an independent auditor to review every account, every transaction. It was exhausting. Months of legal back and forth, documents, statements. The audit cleared me completely, but by then, the damage had already been done. Public trust was fragile. Redemption doesn't go viral the way scandal does. Still, I refused to let bitterness win. Instead, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I made the foundation transparent. Every cent raised, every project funded, every patient helped. We published it all online, publicly accessible. And that's when the tide began to turn. One evening, while scrolling through messages, I found an email from an unfamiliar name, Dr. Claire Halpern, a dermatologist and researcher from Boston. She wrote, "Your foundation's data helped us track patterns in patients suffering from TEN. We're developing safer alternatives for pigmentation treatments. Your experience may have saved more lives than you realize." Tears welled up as I read her words. I realized that what I'd lost in fame, I had gained in impact. I wasn't just a model anymore. I was a voice that refused to die quietly. But then, the final betrayal arrived, one that cut deeper than any headline. One morning, I got a message from a mutual friend. "Madison, you should see this." Attached was a video. My hands trembled as I hit play. It was Chloe, giving an interview on a luxury lifestyle channel. She was unveiling her new brand of ethical cosmetic enhancements, claiming they were 10 safe and endorsed by medical professionals. My heart sank as she used my story, my near-death experience, as her marketing hook. "Our inspiration," she said smoothly, "comes from the lessons learned by brave women who've suffered reactions in the past, like Madison Cole. We honor her story by making sure no woman has to experience that again." The audience applauded. My jaw clenched. She had taken my pain and packaged it into profit. For hours, I sat in silence, numb. Then I called Eleanor, the one person who'd always spoken truth to me, even when it hurt. She came over that evening, bringing 2 mugs of tea and her quiet wisdom. After I ranted and cried, she looked at me and said, "You can't stop people from stealing your words, Madison.
but you can make sure their echo fades faster than your truth. Those words hit home. I didn't need to retaliate. I needed to rise above. So I issued one final public statement. Calm, measured, deliberate. I wrote, "The beauty industry can copy my story, my scars, even my cause, but it can't copy the experience of nearly losing my life for the sake of perfection. If my pain inspires profit, let it, because the truth behind it will keep echoing long after the gloss fades." That statement went viral, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. The comments weren't pitying this time. They were understanding, supportive, empowering. Even Rachel, my former employee, eventually reached out with an apology, half genuine, half self-serving. I forgave her anyway, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding grudges felt like carrying the old toxins again, and I'd already had enough poison in my veins for a lifetime. By the end of that year, the 10 Project had grown stronger than ever. It wasn't built on my name anymore. It was built on hundreds of others. Women who'd faced similar pain, who now educated, trained, and healed others. I became less of a symbol and more of a guide. Quietly, in the background, watching them carry the mission forward. Fame no longer felt like light to chase. It felt like something to give away. Still, every now and then, when I walk past a mirror, I pause. I trace the faint scars along my jawline, reminders of the night the lights almost burned me away. And I whispered to myself, "You survived the fire, Madison. Now, keep the flames safe." But as peaceful as that sounds, there was still one last chapter waiting, one that would test not my strength, but my forgiveness. Because life, in its cruel poetry, always finds a way to ask if you've truly learned what you say you have.
You know, people often talk about scars as proof that we've healed. But no one talks about the ones that don't fade, the ones that refuse to become metaphors, the ones you wake up to every morning and think, "That used to be my face. My skin still bears the map of what I've been through. I don't hide it anymore." Sometimes I trace those faint, uneven lines with my fingertips, not out of vanity, but as a way of remembering what it cost me to be seen. Because once upon a time, being seen was all I wanted. I remember when the cameras flashed and I didn't even have to try. I could walk into a room and feel it bend, like gravity obeyed me. Back then, I thought beauty was a kind of power. Maybe it was, but I also know, now, power without peace is just a different kind of prison. You see, when the fame faded, I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't Madison Reed, the girl on the billboards. I was Madison Reed, the woman checking the mirror for evidence that she was still enough. And that's where it all began to unravel. When you've been adored for how you look, you start believing that love has a shelf life, that maybe when the face changes, affection expires too. That's the lie I lived, the one that whispered I could fix it all with another injection, another cream, another illusion. I was wrong. Glutathione injections? Those words sound clinical, sterile, almost harmless, until your body reminds you that beauty isn't meant to be rewired like machinery. The doctors called it toxic epidermal necrosis. I called it my reckoning. The pain wasn't just physical. It was existential. Every peel, every blister, every raw inch of skin, it stripped away more than my appearance.
It stripped away the armor I had mistaken for identity. For weeks, I couldn't look at my reflection. My eyes would catch the mirror and I'd look away, fast, as if I could unsee myself. Until one morning, I didn't. I stood there. The woman staring back wasn't flawless, but she was real. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to edit her. That was the start of something small but sacred: acceptance. Not the kind people post online, but the kind that grows quietly in the ruins. Funny thing, in the hospital, I met a nurse named Claire. She told me, "Beauty is borrowed, Madison, but kindness is earned." At the time, I was too broken to reply, but those words stuck. When I finally left the hospital, I didn't rush to reclaim my old life. I didn't call my manager, didn't check my follower count, didn't even open the closet full of clothes I used to flaunt. Instead, I started writing. Small notes, reflections, sometimes just questions. Why did I fear aging? Why did I equate youth with worth? Why did I call it ambition when it was actually desperation? You'd be surprised how loud silence can be when you stop performing. And in that silence, I realized something else. The rivalry, the jealousy, the cruel whispers from other models, they weren't just about competition. They were about survival. The fashion industry doesn't reward authenticity, it punishes it. It takes young women, hands them a mirror, and tells them to disappear inside it. But here's the truth no one says out loud. Beauty industries don't sell confidence, they sell fear. Fear of irrelevance, fear of imperfection, fear of time. And we buy it over and over again until our bodies can't keep up with the lies we've been sold. I don't hate the women who envied me or the ones I envied. We were all trapped in the same gilded cage. Some of us just had better lighting. Sometimes I wonder if I'd go back, if I'd choose differently. Part of me, the one that still dreams in camera flashes, says maybe. But the part that finally feels at peace says no, because pain, for all its cruelty, taught me to see. Today, I mentor young models, not about posing or walking, about breathing, about eating when they're hungry, about saying no to treatments that promise perfection but steal their health. I tell them about glutathione, about how my skin once blistered under the weight of false promises, and when I see the horror in their eyes, I don't look away. I let them see the truth. Because truth is healing, not the kind they sell in bottles, but the kind you earn by surviving yourself. Sometimes at night, I light a candle and sit by the mirror again. I don't flinch anymore. I just watch. The flicker of light moves across my scars, and for a second, they almost shimmer. That's when I realize, maybe beauty was never about the surface. Maybe it was always about the soul, learning to stand still after the storm. If there's a moral to this, it isn't to fear aging or to hate beauty. It's to remember that admiration without authenticity is hollow. The applause fades, the mirror cracks, but what remains is you. And you are enough. That's what I finally learned. In losing my face, I found my reflection.